Hey, congratulations, you got the directions right. This is the Distracted Driving Podcast.
Did we give directions?
I mean, you know,
driving.
They got here, so maybe, you know what, maybe they just found it on their own. I don't know. What I do know is that I'm Sean Genovese. I think I host this podcast.
Sometimes. And I'm a co-host or fellow blabberer.
You're a fellow blabberator.
Rex Williams. Did I get the name in there?
You did. You just now. And
Okay.
and yeah, a couple of episodes ago, I don't remember how many now, but we went through an exercise where we had to make up a word. So I was just creative again just now. You're
Okay.
a blabberator. It's a new word. Congratulations. I was just creative, and it has no value.
That's no value.
Unless somebody wants to buy that word, I'll license it to you.
Blabberator.
So let's see. By way of the last 45 seconds, you've kind of gotten a quick overview of what the first, I think it's been 3 episodes with Kevin Meredith have been about.
Yeah, and there's more.
And there's more. This is the last one, episode 18, I think.
The next episode, next and final chapter of the Kevin Meredith story.
Look, okay, just to get something clear, just so people don't think that we're completely loony and
Why not?
and airheaded, you know, the reason we can't remember what episode we're on is sometimes we record these pre and post ambles together at the same time in a group.
Sometimes.
And so while we usually remember what we've talked about, we don't always remember what number episode we're on as we're doing the intro or the outro. So I'm reasonably sure
on the screen.
I'm reasonably sure this is going to be for 18. And look, if it's not, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a good conversation.
Yes. Let's let them listen to it.
Yeah, I'm not even going to tell you what it's about. You're gonna have to listen.
It's the final chapter.
And find
Kevin
out.
Meredith.
The
Kevin
final
Ovation.
chapter. Okay, there we go.
Just made that up. But,
Multiple
yeah, he's awesome.
songs.
He's on his trip. Remember, across the country with his family, going to every national park. And
That's it. That's good. Here's Kevin.
that's-
Well,
like
okay.
podcast.
So we've been talking for a bit here. We're gonna have to start to park
wrap
the
it
car. But maybe could we spend a couple of minutes going back to what you talked about with the homeschooling? I don't know how many kids you have, but you know that's
3.
been a topic. 3 kids, okay. 3 kids, and what ages?
10, 7, and 4.
10, 7, and 4. All right. So moving
Older
through the
brother
10
and 2 younger daughters.
Okay. So 10, 7, and 4, you know, coming on the heels of the pandemic, I know that we're certainly not alone in families that have kind of looked at the landscape, both from a physical safety, politically motivated, may I say, draconian in many cases measures, and played the what if game, you know, because we're all drawing our own lines in the sand of things that we're willing to tolerate and not. And, you know, thankfully, so far for us, it's started to take a turn in a direction that we're comfortable with. But you obviously were in a similar spot, and so homeschooling was something that we talked about. Tell us a little bit about Adventure Board Learning. Is this a cooperative that you have with a bunch of other families? Is this something you're doing? Are you applying fourth sector innovations to your learning model?
Yeah. So we the baseline of it is that in California, you can create your own homeschooling entity and school your own kids with very low overhead at this point. So we formally went through the process of creating Adventure Bound Learning before we left for our trip. But really, some of the things that drove us to do that are what you had talked about. You know, like it really brings my wife and I to tears when we see time and time again communities that are affected by gun violence, specifically in schools. Like going all the way back to Sandy Hook, when I heard about it on the radio, I was pulling into the house, and I literally had to park the car and compose myself, wipe off my tears before I went inside and asked my wife if she had heard what had happened. And then in Texas, I happened to be in Texas the last time this happened, and last major time it happened in a school at least. And like, just, I have an appreciation for where I am when things occur, and just trying to understand the logic that certain individuals applied to how to solve that problem just was broken logic to me. And so that certainly is a driver, is the physical safety of our kids while going to school. That also applies. I mean, it could happen. The safety of our kids could be threatened at any moment. You know, we're driving thousands of miles in a truck with an RV attached to the back of it. Like, there's plenty of things that could go wrong there. So that's one aspect of it for sure. We also, during the pandemic, is where it kind of became blatantly clear, and that was an anomaly, but how ineffective,
pretty big one.
how ineffective the schooling was at producing the types of learning that we thought was important for our kids. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this, because I'm college, multi-master degree holder. Like, I'm saying this because I went to a tiny rural school in upstate New York. I went to K through 12 with, I forget, 500 or 700 kids, like, total. I graduated with 30 kids in my class. That's a private school. I mean, a public school, not a private school. So,
yeah, interesting. I had 60 at my 8th grade graduate. K through 8, we had the same, more or less the same 60 kids.
I had 3,000.
Yeah, see, like that is...
But mine was a private school, not a public school.
Oh.
Yeah. So all I'm saying with that is, in my tiny rural upstate New York town, had exposure to a class literally in 2nd grade. I can remember it clear as day, where we had a specialist come in, and we were all brought through a process where we would close our eyes and use our imagination and our creativity to think about things in a different way. Like, and this is like podunk upstate New York. Like, I'm not saying that pejoratively, but like, the reality is, like, most people would blink and miss driving through my town. So like, it's not, and that we've gotten this far away, like, so that our kids right now in all three, well, the two that are in elementary school, every year now, the teachers are asking for families to buy paper, to buy markers and things for the whole class, because there's not enough resources in the public school system for them to sufficiently materialize their learning. And so it's like, if that's the state that we're in, like, let alone when we talk about STEM and the importance of driving those critical resources and understandings throughout our population in a much broader way, like, we wanted to take a more active approach to finding a different way to do it with our kids. So I don't know if we're going to do this forever, but we're definitely trying it now. And yeah. And another thing is, this is like very, whether you want to call it white privilege or just first world, like, the fact that we had the opportunity to just take a year and go try it. Most people don't have that option. Yeah. Our kids happen to be in a good age where we weren't stripping away their elementary school graduation or their middle school or high school graduation. Like, this is a very safe age for our family to try and do this, with very little risk if it doesn't pan out. And so there were a lot of factors that came together for our decision to give it a shot.
So go ahead, Rex.
Well, it's just experiential learning. I mean, that's, everybody kind of knows where you learn the most is when you're
Yeah.
actually doing something and you're evaluating how it went and whatnot. So I'm sure you've got it all down with things that you're doing and learning in the real world. I mean, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, like every national park we go to, the kids are going through the junior ranger program, and it's just amazing to see how quickly they start to see trends across the multiple parks.
Junior Ranger
It's
program, and then
yeah,
what was
yeah.
after that?
Well, just how every national park that we've been to has a junior ranger program, and there are certain aspects of each one of those programs that are consistent across them. And to reinforce that with the kids now 14 times over, like it's starting to build something that they'll remember. I guess that was another key thing is we really thought hard and said, like, is there a greater opportunity for our kids to remember this for the rest of their lives versus the next year of school just incrementally increasing? And we came to the conclusion that, this would be much more important and impactful in a longer term, even if it is the first of the next 10 years that we do it. This year will be impactful in a way that we're really fortunate to be able to try.
So I want to go back to one of the ways that you started to characterize that, and I'm probably not going to say this in a very polished way, but you said, I don't know if it's privilege or something else, implying that you guys are blessed to be able to do this. I think there's some truth to that. However, if I kind of look at it through a different lens, I mean, really what you're doing is you're changing the system. You're trying to work outside of a broken system. Because you're still, I think you said you still have a house, you're renting it out. So that means you're still paying property taxes. So you're still paying for the education that the state of California is supposed to be providing to your kids. And now you're actually, you're foregoing that and you're doing added work to educate them yourselves. So I don't put that in the column of privilege. And, if I think about military families that have to move from place to place quite often. Really, you're kind of doing something like that, but you're putting a positive spin on it. You're looking at it more from, okay, how could we make this? How could we add value to this circumstance where we are going to be in a different place, maybe every 30 days or every 15 days? And there are a lot of people, particularly now after the pandemic, where we look at some of the learning outcomes or lack thereof, that might say, well, gosh, that's actually a better model, what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think the where I was going on the privilege was around the idea that we have a job and employees that can continue to work boots on the ground that would afford us the opportunity to go travel around for an extended period of time. I am still working remotely, but it's nowhere near as productive, especially before we got Starlink, having assured access to data. That really was stressful at times, not having access and having to run payroll or make sure certain things are a certain way in time. Like that part of it, the business still has to happen. But we had confidence that the people on the team are able to deliver, and not everybody would be in that position. And that's where I was thinking more along the lines of privilege. Maybe it's not privilege, maybe it's economic privilege, not color of my skin privilege, but those things are
I don't know. Is it easier or harder to do those things you just described while you're in Montana versus being in Ontario?
I mean, I think personally, I'm getting more quality time with the kids on a daily basis, even though I'm able to balance my schedule pretty well when I am in Southern California. It's just a lot of that seemed to go on my wife's shoulders more so than now, even though she's the one that's really driving the curriculum and all that stuff. My wife has done an amazing job of making this whole thing happen. It was her idea. And now she says it was her idea, but she said it jokingly, and I got so excited about it that she got on board. I don't remember it quite that way. I thought it was just like a great idea, and I was all for it because of a lot of the reasons that we had already talked about, wanting to try something different. So I guess the ability for me to decide, hey, can we go do this? Or us as a family to decide, can we go do this? There are so many families that can't do that. They couldn't work remote even today. Right. So that's part of the privilege part that I was talking about.
I guess where I get a little triggered with the privilege word, because it gets thrown around in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And what it neglects, though, oftentimes, is the effort required in order to get to a particular outcome. So, you talked about all the things that you've done in the past, the education you have, or the things that you did to get your business to where it is, to enable you to go do this. Privilege to me would be being able to just snap your fingers and somebody else takes over and it doesn't cost you anything and you're not paying extra. I'm pretty sure that if I were riding along with you guys for a month, I could probably write a book about how you're working harder on this trip than you would be if you were at home. But granted, the value, going back to value, we're going to bring it right back, right? So the value to you that you're getting in terms of time with your kids and the ability to influence their education is that's the trade-off.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh, man, which is probably a good place to end this so we can let you get back to the bears and the trains. A lot of rail traffic there in Montana, huh?
We have not actually seen a bear. So just real quick, like as far as seeing amazing things, and I'm part of a network that's called the Circular Supply Chain Network. It's led by Deborah Dull. Look her up. It's the future of supply chain is sustainability. That sustainability would be hugely influenced by this notion of circularity. So I'm lucky enough to be a volunteer on this team, and the idea that I shared with them was on this trip, I've seen so many amazing animals that I've never seen in the wild before, whether it be like literally elk sitting on the hiking path 6 feet away and didn't realize that it was there until you're on top of it almost. And like giant elk, like blocking the whole trail. 200 bison are making their way down this field and they cross the road literally where our car is parked watching this. Like these experiences all would have been missed within minutes. And so like the learning, the insight that like, and we talk about this in our system model for innovation. When we talk about resources, we talk about time as a resource. That is your most important resource, is time. Regardless of anybody, we all account for time in the same exact way. And how much we ultimately have for our life is variable, but we all account for time the same way. And so it's a democratizing resource that we don't honor enough, I think, in business and innovation. But part of that time is also timing. And how many of these amazing experiences, like we were just in Yellowstone and it was raining on and off all day, which doesn't make for a great day, but we came to this iconic place in Yellowstone called Artist Point, and it's a big waterfall. And then, bam, double rainbow opposite the waterfall. It's like, we would have experienced that had those conditions not been exactly right, and if we weren't there to experience it exactly that time. And if you extend that out to everything else in our lives, like how many relationships did we just miss, or did we connect with because the timing was just right?
I think there have been some movies about that.
Yeah.
The butterfly effect, sliding doors.
Yeah. I mean, just like how things can be just slightly altered and have a huge impact. When we talk about risk in innovation, is most of the time we talk about risk-averse organizations. But what that is an easy way to say no to something without doing some due diligence around it. One of the criteria that we believe should be introduced into anybody's thinking about risk and saying no is, what is the opportunity cost if we don't do anything?
Oh, I love that approach.
Yeah, if we're really just focused on what... Okay, so first of all, with risk, there has to be two things, and I learned this at Boeing, and it's stuck with me ever since. Like, you can't have risk with anything less than two factors, and I would argue a third, which would be time, is the additional factor. But you have to have the likelihood of occurrence, and you have to have the magnitude of impact. If you don't have at least those two things, you can't have any meaningful discussion about risk. So then, if you also then cross that on a third axis of time, where all those conditions have to exist together, then you can start to really talk about risk. And that conversation can't happen if you don't consider the opportunity cost, because now you're incorporating what could have been at a future point in time if you hadn't done anything, for example.
Well, and I learned this long ago too, when trying to capture the costs or the ROI of things that maybe were very difficult to calculate. One of the greatest starting points you can have is, okay, well, let's talk about what it's costing today.
Yep.
And then you can look at what you're going to, propose or change, and just simply ask the question, well, do we believe this will be more or less than what we're spending today?
Yep.
And usually you can answer that question. You might not know the number or the magnitude, but you can answer the question, will it be more or less?
Yep.
Well, Kevin, we're getting a lot of solar flares here on this part of the conversation. You keep cutting out for us, so I think we're gonna let you go. We've got I jotted down so many vocabulary words that were great for this conversation. Thank you for taking the time on the trip.
Thank you, guys.
In the middle of Montana to chat with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, well, that is the end of both episode 18 and our first chat with our friend Kevin Meredith. We are going to end this round of professional blabberating.
Yeah, Kevin was great. Like, isn't he amazing? Like, you really got to check out the fourth sector innovation.
Fourth sector innovation. And you know what we should do is when he finishes the book and the book is available for purchase, we will have him back on to talk about the book.
Yeah, he's writing a book. Can I promote that?
I may adopt the book as the official textbook for my class.
Oh, for your class. Yeah, the college kids. They got to learn these things.
No, we're looking forward to the book, though, and having him back on. And I'm looking forward to getting to see him in living color. In fact, by the time this drops, I may have already had that encounter.
Yeah, it was great. He's traveling through, meeting both of us at different times and places.
So until next time, go give us some stars, please. If the spirit catches you, write us a comment. We'd love to hear some feedback, suggestions for future guests.
Yeah, you got ideas?
Would love to hear about that.
Not getting distracted while driving.
Yes, don't get distracted while driving your car or driving change or challenging the status quo.
That's right.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to the Distracted Driving Podcast. We will see you next time.
Ciao.
We just did the outro for 17.
I thought we did the intro.
We did them both. Right? Because that's why I said, we got to ask people for more engagement. And it was at the end of 17. So now we're going to do the beginning of 18.
Okay.
Okay.
We've only done 2, right? So wait, how many have we done?
We
just
did.
now?
Okay, so we did the end of 16, which is going to air today.
Yeah.
We did the beginning of 17 and the end of 17. Now we're about to do the beginning of 18, which will be the last episode with Kevin.
Yeah, you said there was 2 more.
I think I said it at
You
the
can
end of
edit it.
16, though.
You can edit it out. It's fine. Or leave it in.
I don't know. All right, here we go.
What's this one about?
I don't know.